Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. Welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial I will demonstrate how to make the first aid travel pouch. The pattern is available on my website. I will put the link to the shop in the description box below, plus some additional information on how to receive a free copy of this pattern. The pattern is suitable for an intermediate sewist. However, if you are an advanced beginner and know how to install zipper and sew around the curves, then you should be able to make this pouch with my help. The first aid travel pouch features a side handle and a top zipper closure. You can customize the front by adding a patch or an embroidery design and use one of the two templates from the pattern, the cross one or the square one. On the back of the pouch you will find a clear ID pocket. I like to keep my next of kin information or a first aid guide there. Inside the pouch you will find plenty of pockets to store all your medical supplies separately. You have two slip pockets on the front flap. There is a divider in the middle with three clear cargo pockets on one side and two slip pockets on the other side. On the back panel you will find additional two clear cargo pockets and two smaller slip pockets. I've divided this tutorial into separate chapters, so if you are interested in watching a specific part, then check the timestamps in the description box. If you would like to make this first aid travel pouch with me, then keep on watching. To complete today's project, you would need external fabric. I'm using waterproof canvas today. Lining fabric, such as waterproof canvas or cotton. Clear vinyl to make your pockets. Non-fraying fabric such as vinyl for leather or cork. Mesh fabric. And some woven interfacing. You also need 53 cm long zipper. If you are using a continuous zipper today like me, cut it longer. If you like, you can also add first aid patch or add some machine embroidery to the front. You will need double folded bias tape, fold over elastic, some clips or pins to hold everything in place, your favorite marking tools, double-sided tape, masking tape, some snips and scissors, a ruler to take some measurements, seam ripper just in case if something goes wrong. It is optional, but I also like to apply some multi-surface glue in some areas. And lastly, you need some hand needle and a thread. You will need to cut two pieces for the front and back from your external and lining fabric, two divider pieces from your lining fabric. If you are using directional print, make sure you cut one as a mirror image. One medium slip pocket from your lining fabric, two small middle panels from your lining fabric, one middle panel from your external fabric, one handle from the external fabric, and one gusset from your external and lining fabric. Make sure to cut it 55 cm long. You would need to cut one small slip pocket from your mesh fabric, one double slip pocket from your mesh fabric, one large slip pocket from your lining and mesh fabric, but before you cut it from your mesh fabric, make sure you fold the pattern piece along the dotted lines. From vinyl, you need to cut one double cargo pocket, one triple cargo pocket, and one external pocket. From your non-fraying fabric, you need to cut either one cross or one square template. I'm using a cross template today. And one pocket overlay. Make sure to apply woven interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric, as indicated in the sewing instruction. Remember also to transfer all markings and notches from individual pattern pieces. On the right side of one of your dividers, transfer the stitching line. You need to do the same thing for the back lining piece. To transfer the notches and the stitching line to your clear vinyl pockets, I like to apply a masking tape because it is easier to draw on top. Just remember to keep the masking tape out of the side and top edge, so it's easier for you to stitch later on. You can also cut some notches along the bottom edge. Do the same for the double cargo pocket. Alternatively, you can use friction pen or a marker to draw your notches. However, be careful because it is easier to wipe them off by accident. I know everyone is different, but I like to divide my work into separate sections. Take your zipper, external handle. I like to write the name of the pattern piece on the back. External middle panel, and your external and lining gusset pieces. For the next section, you can take external front piece, your first aid patch if you have one, and your cross or square template. Next, you can take your external back piece, external vinyl pocket, and the pocket overlay. For the next section, you would need your lining front piece and your large slip pockets. To make the process easier, I like to pre-cut bias tape and fold over elastic. The length is provided in the sewing instruction. Now you can take your lining back piece, the one with the stitching line, double cargo pocket and bias tape, medium slip pocket from your lining fabric, small slip pocket from your mesh fabric, piece of fold over elastic, and another piece of bias tape. For the next section, take one divider, double slip pocket from the mesh fabric, small piece of bias tape, and piece of fold over elastic. For the last section, take the other divider with the stitching lines, your double cargo pocket, and a piece of bias tape. The remaining pieces of small middle panel, you can add it to the last divider section. Take your external front piece and draw two lines in the center. This will help to position the cross or square template and first aid patch evenly. You can decide how high or low you would like your templates to be. On the wrong side of the cross or square template, apply double-sided tape. Remove the plastic cover and center it on top of the front piece. Leaving long thread tails, we're going to edge stitch around all raw edges. Next, you can place your first aid patch and press it with an iron or top stitch around it. Once you've got that stitch down, you can flip the panel to the other side, pull the thread tails to the wrong side, tie a knot to secure, and apply some multi-surface glue to the knot. On the wrong side of the pocket overlay, apply double-sided tape. Remove the plastic cover and place the external vinyl pocket on top. Press it with your fingers. Leaving long thread tails, we're going to edge stitch around the inner window. Pull the thread tails to the wrong side, tie a knot, and apply some glue. With right sides facing up, position the pocket on top of the external back piece. You can use masking tape to hold everything in place. Make sure to leave long thread tails and edge stitch around the outer edge. Again, you can pull the thread tails to the wrong side, tie a knot, and apply some glue. Now we're going to prep both large slip pockets. Take double folded bias tape and with wrong sides together, fold it and press it in half. Take lining slip pocket and wrap the bias tape around the top edge. Pin it in place. And we're going to top stitch the bias tape close to the edge. Take the mesh pocket and the fold over elastic, and we're going to fold the elastic in half around the top edge of the mesh pocket. Next, take it to the machine and we're going to top stitch the elastic close to the edge. Make sure to increase the stitch length and remember to stretch the elastic during sewing. Place the mesh pocket on top of the lining pocket. You can use the ruler to keep the top edge of the mesh pocket straight. Line up the remaining edges and pin everything in place. We're going to baste the pockets together along the remaining raw edges. Place the large slip pockets on top of the lining front panel and line up on all sides. Again, you can use the ruler to keep the top edge straight. Pin it together and we're going to baste everything together, following the curved edge of the front piece. You can trim the excess fabric. Take the next section and press the bias tape in half. Take double cargo pocket and finish the top edge by wrapping the bias tape around it. Pin in place and we're going to top stitch close to the edge. Next, you're going to take your small slip pocket and you're going to wrap the fold over elastic along the left side of the pocket. Pin it together and we're going to top stitch close to the edge. Take the double cargo pocket and place it on top of the back lining piece. Line up the stitching lines and pin in place. You're going to sew along that stitching line and stitch a little triangle along the top edge to anchor the pocket. Once you've got that stitch down, we're going to make the cargo pockets by matching the notches. First, fold the pocket along the notch 1B and bring it towards the stitching line by making a small pleat. Use clips to hold everything in place. Now we're going to meet notches 1A and 2A. So fold the pocket along notch 2A and bring it towards notch 1A. The sides of the pocket and the back panel should meet. Repeat the same steps on the other side of the pockets and pin everything together. We're going to base stitch the pocket following the curved edge of the back piece. But first you can remove the masking tape. You can trim the excess vinyl. Place the small mesh pocket on top of the medium slip pocket and line up the top, bottom and the right side edge. Pin everything in place and we're going to baste the pockets together. Now you can take the bias tape and finish the bottom edge of the medium slip pocket. Place the slip pocket above the cargo pocket and use the ruler to keep everything straight. And baste it following the curved edge. Trim off the excess fabric. Take this small piece of bias tape and fold it in half. We're going to place the bias tape in the middle of the double slip pocket. If you prefer to make a single pocket, take the bias tape and finish the top edge instead. Pin the bias tape in the middle of the mesh pocket and sew a straight line in the center. Take the fold-over elastic and wrap it around the top edge of the mesh pocket. We're going to top stitch the elastic close to the edge. Place the mesh pocket on top of the divider, line it up on all sides and pin in place. You're going to stitch a box around all sides of the bias tape and then baste the pocket following the curve of the divider. I didn't include that in the pattern, but if you prefer, you can install a rivet to secure the pocket in place. Trim off the excess fabric. To make the triple cargo pocket, you need to press double-folded bias tape in half and wrap it around the top edge of the pocket. Pin together and top stitch close to the edge. To make individual pockets, first line up the stitching line 2A, pin it together, and you're going to sew along that stitching line and stitch a little triangle on the top. Next, line up the stitching line 2B, pin it in place, and sew a straight line on top. To make the first pocket, you're going to bring notch 1A towards the stitching line 2A. Line up the sides and pin everything together. Repeat on the other side of the panel. To make the last pocket, you're going to bring the remaining notches towards the stitching line. And we're going to baste the pocket around the divider. But first you can remove the masking tape. Trim the excess vinyl. With right sides together, place the dividers on top of each other, line up on all sides, and pin it together. We're going to stitch around all sides, apart from the straight edge. Take your scissors and we're going to clip the seam allowance at the inner corners as close as possible to the stitching line. Next, you can trim the seam allowance by half around the divider. Using the opening, we can turn the divider right side out. If you can, press the seam allowance, otherwise, like me, use clips to hold everything flat. Now we can take it to the machine and top stitch around all sides close to the edge. Take one of your small middle panels and with right sides together, center one of the longer edges along the straight edge of the divider. You can baste everything together, otherwise turn the panel over and with right sides together, place the remaining middle panel on top. Line it up and pin everything together. We're going to sew the seam along that straight edge. When you're ready, you can press the seam allowance to one side and then take it to the machine and top stitch along that seam line, making sure we catch the seam allowance. Take the external handle and on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a line in the middle and press both edges towards the line. Line up the folded edges and press it in half. We're going to top stitch the handle on both sides. Take the external middle panel and making sure you've got your notches, center the handle on top. We're going to baste the handle on both sides. Take the zipper and the external gusset and with right sides together, line up the zipper along the top edge of the gusset. Using a zipper foot, you're going to sew the zipper in place. Once you've got that stitch down, you can take your lining gusset and with right side facing down, place it on top of the zipper. Pin it in place and stitch along that top edge. To make it easier, you can open the panel and press the seam allowance flat. Next, bring the gusset wrong sides together and press it along the seam. Line up the remaining raw edges of the gussets together and pin everything in place. Take it to the machine and stitch it on all sides. Trim excess zipper. With right sides together, place the middle panel on top of the gusset, line up along the shorter side and pin it together. Then you can line up the other side When you're ready, you can baste on both sides. Take your divider and with right sides together, line up the small middle panels on top of the gusset. Make sure you keep the divider out of the way and pin it in place. Next, you're going to line up the other short edge. However, I found it easier to fold the gusset out of the way first. Line everything together and we're going to sew both seams. You can turn the gusset right side out and line up the remaining raw edges of the middle panel. Next, we're going to top stitch the middle panel along the finished seam, making sure we keep the handle and the divider out of the way. Then you can baste stitch the raw edges. Now divide the gusset in 4 equal sections and make notches. Take the external front piece and check if you've got your middle notches. With right sides together, you're going to center the middle panel along the left side of the front piece. You can turn the gusset wrong side out or open the zipper and meet the remaining 3 notches with the notches of the zipper. Line up the zipper tape around the edge of the front panel and pin it together. It might be helpful to make little snippets into the zipper so it lays flat around the curves. When you're ready, you can baste the zipper around the entire front panel using 5 mm seam allowance. Next, you can take your lining front piece and place it on top of the external piece. It is easier if you fold the gusset and the divider out of the way first. Place the lining piece on top, line up all 4 notches, and pin it on all sides. You're going to stitch around the entire panel. However, leave at least 10 to 15 centimeters opening on one side, so we can turn everything right side out. Trim the seam allowance by half. Using the opening, turn everything right side out. To close the opening, you can use double-sided tape or a fabric glue. However, I prefer to hand stitch the opening using a ladder stitch. This option is more time consuming, but I feel it gives me the best security when top stitching the panel. With right side facing up, you're going to top stitch around the front panel. With wrong sides together, place the external and lining back panel pieces on top of each other. Line up on all sides and pin it together. You're going to base the panel around all edges. Making sure your external pieces face each other, you're going to line up the middle panel along the right side of the back panel piece. Match all your notches. Snip the gusset at the corners to make it easier to lay flat. Line it up on all edges and pin it together. We're going to sew the seam using 7mm seam allowance. I found it easier to stitch from the gusset side. Double check if there is no puckering and trim the seam allowance to 5 mm. Take the double folded bias tape, unfold one side and line it up on top of the back piece. To make sure you don't have raw edges, fold the short edge of the bias tape towards the wrong side by 45 degrees. Line up the bias tape around the entire panel and hold it with clips. When you arrive to the beginning, you can overlay the bias tape on top and trim off the excess. Now we're going to sew the bias tape in place using 5 mm seam allowance. I like to sew it from the gusset side to use the previous stitches as a guideline. Now wrap the bias tape towards the gusset side, covering the raw edge. Hold it with clips and we're going to top stitch the bias tape using 5 mm seam allowance. Yet again, I prefer to stitch it from the gusset side to make sure I cover the previous stitching line with the bias tape. Once you've got that stitch down, turn the first aid travel pouch to the right side and give it a final press if you have to.